All right, boys and girls, we're back.
Back at it again, huh?
Farmer Chris, you're like the regular official podcast co-host now.
I just fill in, don't I?
And the sad part is works a lot. Is like literally running around outside somewhere.
Yeah, we can't get him wrangled in.
Nowhere to be found. So
he's come 11 hours. We can't get him the last.
11 hours. We can't get him the last 3 minutes to the door. So we did, last podcast we did was, I don't even remember.
Good, bad, and ugly of social media.
Well, that's still be determined if it's going to post because GoPro made some
GoPro mistakes.
We did a few podcasts, but we have a guest today.
Yeah, we've got a new guest today.
I'll let you introduce our guest.
Gator.
We're gonna call it. We're gonna go incognito with
it's the all-out Gator.
All-out Gator.
I think more people know me as Gator than they do my real name. So.
There's several people in the county who probably don't even know who Dave Gailey is.
I had to think about it whenever you said he was going to be on.
I texted him. I said, "What about Dave Gailey?" He goes, "Yeah, Gator."
All right, so let's give a little bit of background. We've known each other for. I don't know, we've known each other for a good while. Should we let the cat out of the bag that your oldest daughter technically works for me, but she don't want to be seen over there?
Oh, no. Let it out.
Let it out.
You come scratching.
So basically, if you guys leave a really rude comment on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, she's the one that deals with that.
She's the one that has to deal with it, yeah.
So your daughter worked for us down at the store for a while, did an awesome job. She's helped me with some of my social media stuff for a while. We've known each other for a long time, but probably got to know each other a little better here in the last 4 or 5 years. You guys know each other for a long time.
Well, Gator's probably going to slap me, but my grandma and your grandma were sisters. Is that correct? Something like that. We're related.
We're going to start getting the Hoover comment. Yeah. How much you do look alike.
Yeah. We're related one way or the other down the road.
I'm starting to feel like I'm going to get teamed up on now. I don't know if I feel like this is going to go.
It's on our mom's side.
Yeah, your mom's mom.
So you guys both went to Perry Central School as well, right?
Yep. Gator's got a few more years on me, a lot more gray hair
on me. Did he miss the day where they taught how to read a calendar?
Yeah. This was scheduled for Wednesday or Thursday?
Yeah, Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah.
I'm going to sit back and just enjoy
you want to describe how this went down?
Well, I do admit.
No, we're not giving him the benefit of the doubt on nothing. It is literally white and blue and white on a text message.
Yes, it is.
It's not like black and white. It's on.
I text him at 8:30 on a Tuesday evening.
Tuesday. You know what?
Would you be able?
That comes. There's 7 days, and Tuesday comes after Monday.
Would you be able to do a podcast tomorrow? He answers me Wednesday morning. Yeah, what time? Scheduled time. Me and you're sitting here.
He's nowhere to be found.
Gator's nowhere to be found. He said tomorrow. It was tomorrow, yesterday when I texted.
Not the day you answer the text message, it's the day you receive the text message.
Oh, he's talking engineering time.
So anyways, we've had a lot of fun out of it. Yep. You know, it's crazy. We've done a few podcasts and we survived without you. So we feel like got them on.
We had man behind the scenes fill in for
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right. We had man behind the scenes on there. So but anyways, glad to have him on. You got a little bit of unique. Let's do before we go down that road.
Okay.
We got you on here because you are technically, I'm air quoting here if people can't see me, an engineer.
Technically, yes.
You've worked with 2 major companies, well-known companies. You can name them if you want, but you didn't take the normal route a normal person would get to be to that.
I did not.
And I'm on my channel. I'm very vocal about how I feel about engineers.
I've heard.
I cut them no slack.
Right.
So first off, give us a little bit of background on your history, how to got where you're at, and maybe some of your credentials.
Well, I started out basically going into a drafting program occupation. I started at a little company called Southern Tank in Owensboro.
Really?
I didn't know you worked there.
I worked there for right around 6 months.
That fuel tank on the back of my truck, I had them custom make that over there.
Yep. And I worked there, and at the same I put in an application for those guys, I put an application in for a major diesel company, which is
my favorite. My favorite of all time.
Yeah.
This is where it gets good. You're an engineer. That's my favorite company.
Is that big C?
That's sarcasm. If anybody.
Sarcasm? Huh.
If anybody hasn't noticed.
But they had a journeymanship program that basically entailed the drafting occupation, and I accepted. I went
Yep.
up there. I worked there for 7 years, which the unique part of that was back in the early 90s. And
That's when. So can we name the company?
sure.
So you went with Cummins Corporation.
Cummins, yes.
Which Cummins is a worldwide leader in diesel engines from what down to about 100 horse up through 600 horse, 700 horse.
It's huge, yeah. It's well, they've got the V's, stuff like that. They've got some
Of
big
course,
stuff.
they kind of hit and miss a little bit on what they're more popular in. And their world headquarters is about an hour and a half north of us, where we're located
Yes.
here.
Yeah.
So whenever you said you went to work for Cummins, you went to work for the Cummins.
The Cummins, yes.
The big dogs right up the road. Anybody that's been to Columbus, Indiana knows the compound they got up there. It's pretty impressive. As much as I've been vocal on my channel about how much I do not like engineers, I've also been pretty vocal about how much I don't like Cummins. Now,
How many Cummins you're getting 2 pieces of equipment with
What?
Cummins in them now?
What?
Is that correct?
Did I hear that right?
one of them's stuck in the barn.
Oh,
I don't know what you're-
that's your own fault though.
I've had a lot of them over the years I sold. We'll get into the details. I don't want to group all their engines together as bad engines. They've got lucky and made a few good ones. And there's some things about them I like, but there's some features about them that are consistent throughout most models that drive me batshit crazy.
Probably a pretty short drive, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing. You know where they've been.
Yeah.
And you know where they stopped.
That's
Yeah.
right.
All right. So
They sure marked their spot.
they
some
do
of
mark.
them
They're
did.
kind of like a dog. But 7 years up there.
7 years.
And I guess this is a little bit of a segue into, correct me if I'm wrong, but that 7 years you spent at Cummins, you hired in as a draftsman. Mm-hmm. And would you say you left there as a mechanical engineer?
I left there as a mechanical designer, I'll say.
Okay.
I wouldn't say they consider it a full-fledged engineer job because...
But you were engineering and designing parts.
Yes.
Which I don't know if that path is easily available today, but I feel like the circle's coming back around to where it is.
Actually, I don't know. I can't answer that.
And I don't want to compare you to Matt, Mr. Millennial, but in a totally different industry, he kind of had the same path. He showed up as a salesman, showed up as a problem solver, worked with the next design houses. The next thing you know, he's in there designing them with them, which would kind of be a similar, like there's more than one way to get your butt in the door.
Right.
And I feel like with people, of course, I'm an employer. I hire people. I know people who hire people. I feel like with qualified people becoming less available, that employers are starting to look more at what you can do instead of what you've been told you can do, which is what education does, is basically tell you what you can do. Did I say that right?
No, I think that's pretty accurate, yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about it. You got
After you left Cummins, are you at the current job you was at then now?
Yeah,
Okay.
I left Cummins to move to an automotive company down in New Albany.
So, for people who are not really familiar with the progression of the history of the diesel engine, if you got there in the early 90s, you got there at a really exciting time because it was switching over from mechanical injection to computer controlled or electronic injection.
Yes.
And pre-emissions.
Pre-emissions, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But Cummins has also kind of been known for being the head of the curve on a lot of different
Yes.
things.
Very much so. And they truly are.
Right.
They truly are.
Which is one of the reasons, I mean, if people want to doubt what I'm saying, it's the reason why you still see Cummins motors in over-the-road trucks, and you do not see any Caterpillar motors
correct.
in over-the-road trucks.
They couldn't
Cummins
keep
stayed
up.
ahead of that.
Yeah.
I personally feel like Detroit was the best prepared for the first round of emissions, but I'd say Cummins was probably a pretty close second.
Yeah. Yeah.
Detroit, man, whenever stage, what did they call it? Stage one, stage
Phase
two,
one or
phase
something,
one, phase two, phase three, and then it was final, wasn't it?
Yeah. Tier one.
Tier one, there he was.
Yeah.
Tier one,
Tier one.
two. It's tier 1, 2, 3, and final.
Yeah.
And everybody kind of caught up with everybody at 3 and final. But man, in the beginning, Detroit and Cummins had it. They had it figured out in the very beginning.
Yeah, it's really neat because some of the stuff that I saw that I was working on, and you know, at the time you get to see this actually run on test cell engines and stuff like that. some of the stuff that I worked on back then is, really starting to peek its head out now,
Which
So
is
it's been sitting on the shelf the whole time.
Yeah, because they didn't have to have it.
which I watch a lot. I'm getting off in the weeds here, but I watch a lot of aviation videos, and Boeing's taking a lot of heat right now because they're basically saying we're not going to design a new airplane this decade because the technology is not there to support it. But as doomsday-ish as that sounds, it goes back to your point you just said, if it takes that long, not only do you have to forecast what the demand's going to be 15, 20 years from now, and what the regulations are going to be 15, 20 years from now, it takes 5, 6, 7 years. What does it take? Probably 3 to 4 years to design it, another 3 to 4 years to test it, another 3 to 4 years to implement it?
Depending on what you're doing. Obviously there's more technical engines out there and less technical engines out there. I know when they talk about designing cars, they talk about designing cars in 3 years. That's a short time for
It's a short time.
designing a car. And an engine's really not that different when you look at the detail that you have to put into that engine.
Modern day computer stuff is speeding
Yeah.
it all up faster as we go.
Yeah, CAD software is making a huge impact on it, and CAD software can make an engineer.
Yeah.
It really can.
Because it puts you in a box and keeps you from going outside your parameters.
Well, that's actually why I got the engineering position, because I didn't stay in that box. So
This reminds me of a joke the other day, and this old engineer passed away, and this young guy goes to his funeral, and he said, "Who's staying outside the box now, Bob?"
John stuck, ain't he?
I laughed pretty good at that one. Well, and I guess that's what I guess that's what makes one engineer different from the other. One that's willing to think outside the box and push an envelope. And one of my biggest pet peeves in life, I know I'm not the only one that says this, is why you doing that? Well, that's the way we always did it.
right.
Or, I get a comment every once in a while is, why don't you do it like Chris, or why don't you do it like Bob, or why don't you do it like so-and-so? I'm not saying they're doing it wrong, but just because they're doing it don't make it right either.
Yeah.
All right.
You know what I mean?
We got in that argument at work all the time. There's more than one way to do something right.
Yeah, the way I build a lake and the way somebody else may build a lake may be totally different. That don't mean either one of us is wrong or right.
Yeah.
There's more than one way to get to a destination. You're going to take the train, the boat, the car, the airplane, or what? But if you all end up in the same spot,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
what,
there.
What does it really matter at that point? So, I know some stuff you may not be able to talk about. Any projects that you worked on at Cummins that we may know be out there in the world today?
A lot. Well, we worked right towards the end of my career there. We was working on basically the coolers, the intercoolers, the coolers mounted on the side of the engine, and stuff like that. That was a technology I believe they were able to implement with the N14 to revamp it just a little bit.
Which the N14 eventually become the Signature 600.
With one head, yeah.
Yeah.
With one head, yeah.
Yeah.
I like how they try to camouflage their projects. Well, yes.
But yeah, they're
Which them coolers become much more important in the emissions day and age,
Yes.
because you're controlling more temperatures than just water and oil. You're not controlling EGR temperatures, fuel temperatures,
Right.
intake air temperatures.
which EGR is one of the biggest at the time was one of the biggest challenges out there because they never could take the heat.
Go
Yeah.
back and catch some dummies up when you say a one head. So these are 6-cylinder diesel motors. So the M14 had 3 heads, 3 valve covers. And then, the new ISX 15s or whatever is one head, one valve cover.
You know the main
on.
reason why they went to one head? Because Cummins, to deal with heat issues, wanted to put the EGR in the internal.
Internal.
I wasn't there for that.
Yeah, I can answer that question for you. I dealt with it. Which honestly makes the engine look a lot cleaner. That's
Yeah.
why a lot of their emissions engines had a lot cleaner look. There's a lot less garbage hanging off the side of them. but that was the main reason to go to a single one-piece head.
A single head.
I think they went to an overhead camshaft.
Yeah.
That's another big reason, which an overhead camshaft is. I don't know if it's more efficient for the engine, but it's more efficient because there's less moving parts with push rods and all that good stuff, rocker arms.
Well, there were some other technologies built into that, so it was actually really neat. But I'll leave that one alone.
Yeah.
Look out! He's still hiding secrets all these years later.
Oh, I know. Well, they're still sitting on
He
the
can
shelf.
hide their secrets, but he sure can't hide their oil leaks, can he?
I don't have to.
No, I mean, you see stuff on the news article stuff. You know, Cummins is, I think, actually looking on some hydrogen fueled equipment
Alternate
motors.
fuels has always been one of their.
No,
Well,
I've
even
seen an
back-
ad this morning, like a 48 volt, 10 liter motor. So I don't know how electric and diesel are working together here. So we'll see what they're coming up with.
There were. I don't know. That
Yeah.
was something I never worked on, was the electric side of it.
I mean, I guess Chris opened a whole can of worms here, so let's dive into that one. I mean, even back whenever, I never was an engineer for Mack Trucks, but I dealt with a lot of the engineers through the dealership for Mack Trucks. And even back then, we were in the industry pretty much at the same time, early 2000s. Even back then, there was a big push or a big talk about alternative fuels and different things. And a lot of people may not know this, but you can actually take a diesel engine, pull the injector out, put a spark plug in, and run it on natural gas. Like, you don't have to change the heads, you don't have to change anything. The only thing you do is take the injection pump off, if it has one, or the injection system off, pull the injector out. And a lot of times, like in these third world countries, that's how they'd run these big generators. They'd go out and drill a natural gas well, and they'd just feed one of these big diesel engines and
With natural gas.
and let them run. I don't know what the specs are. I believe the horsepower goes up, but the torque goes down.
I don't know.
It's minimal. They do produce a lot more heat running off that, so you have to control that a little bit. But a diesel engine is nothing more than a big air pump that runs off heat. That's all it is. It don't matter, honestly, if it's running off hydrogen, natural gas, cooking oil. It don't care what you cram down its throat.
If it's hot enough to make
If it's hot
combustion.
enough to burn, it's going to burn.
Yeah.
You know, a gas engine's a lot more temperamental about what it'll do, which makes, everybody wants to poo-poo on a diesel engine, but which makes it extremely universal
Yeah.
when it comes to alternate fuels. Would you agree with that
Yeah,
statement?
I would.
Now, obviously, we live in the world here today where EVs, electric vehicles, are all the rage. I want to go on the record and be perfectly clear. I have nothing against electric vehicles. I honestly think they got their place in certain scenarios and applications. If you lived in a big city and never went more than 30 blocks a day to work or this, that, or the other, or
Pretty nice.
yeah, I'd probably have one in a heartbeat. But what drives me absolutely crazy about them is they act like it's an answer for everything. And it's not. The second thing that drives me crazy about them is they act like they're saving the environment with these things. And if you really want to get nitty gritty dirty about it, they burn way more diesel fuel mining lithium in third world countries with no regulations that are destroying the environment versus what we do mining fossil fuels. Lithium, as far as I know, is a non-renewable resource.
But still, you know, you got to mine fossil fuels, you know, for a diesel motor. We still got to mine fossil fuels for the coal or the fuel
coal,
for the
that's
power
right.
plant to produce electric.
And then, to my point, they are good in a lot of scenarios, but they are not a catch-all. Like, you're not, it is unrealistic to think that everything that has an internal combustion engine in it today can run on electric in 15 years.
The technology's not there yet.
The technology, the infrastructure, nothing's there.
No, even if you try and get rid of fossil fuels, you're looking at solar, you're looking at wind, you're looking at other ways to generate the juice. And those have proven here in the last couple of years that they're not efficient enough
Or reliable.
or reliable. That's right.
Everybody, you know, windmills and solar panels especially, again, we have a big, I don't know how many, I think a windmill holds like 300 and 400 gallons of oil or something in them.
Well, We went on that
Oh, there's oil all over them fields.
tour up there, yeah, to your cousin's
Oil all over
axle
the field.
place.
And then you know what else?
There are
is going on?
windmills up there, and there's just black
That's
stuff
running all
running
the way
down,
down the pole.
You can just see oil running down them.
And then you want to talk about what else was laying in the oil? A bunch of dead birds.
Dead birds, yeah.
You know, then you want to talk about the efficiency of solar panels, which they're efficient, but their efficiency is based off the first year of existence. And then if you look at the graph, it's
Drops
downhill slide. So I don't know. Maybe somebody can comment on this. Maybe you have an answer. I don't know why more hybrid technology hasn't filtered into the construction and filter world, construction and equipment world. Caterpillar has had a D7 dozer with an electric drive motor in it. Actually, the very first prototype ran in the coal mines down in Madisonville, Kentucky. Dad was in the coal mines back in the late 80s, early 90s. That dozer is still in production today. Nobody ever talks about it. Dad ran the dozer. Of course, Dad's been gone for a while. I remember Dad talking about it. He had zero complaints about it whatsoever back then. Fuel efficiency was half of what they are today. And I'm not 100% for sure if that dozer is still not running down there in the coal mine. That was the original one.
So it's still got a diesel motor in it, run a generator.
It's got like a 70 horse diesel motor that runs a generator, and it's got 2 electric drive motors instead of final drive. It has no transmission oil, no nothing.
It's set up like a train.
They actually had one at Con Expo whenever we were out there last year. Same as a train locomotive, same as some of these tugboats. Diesel versus
Well,
electric.
what was
which is
longer
behind
wage at Con Expo? He kept, was it turbine engines running generators? Was that his big kick he was on?
The problem with a turbine engine running a generator is I think you'd have to run it off diesel fuel because jet fuel is like a higher grade of diesel fuel, which is much more explosive. One huge advantage of diesel fuel is it's not combustible; it's flammable.
It's flammable, but not.
So you can dump diesel fuel out here on the ground, take a torch to it, and it won't light. You missed it out of like a Windex bottle or something, and it'll blow up. Or gas, if you do that, it's going to blow up. So jet fuel is a much more combustible version of diesel fuel.
Yep.
So you got to be kind of careful. And then if you run a jet engine off straight up diesel fuel, since you lost the combustibility of it, I think you lose some of the efficiency. Which I hear Wade's argument, but there's issues there too. But so then I guess the next one's hydrogen, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, everybody agrees that hydrogen is probably the answer. The problem is storing it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd want to drive one.
I mean, you're basically literally driving around on a bomb.
Yeah.
Well, we've proven that with that blimp, so it done blew up too. So.
Was that hydrogen? I guess that was hydrogen.
It was a hydrogen blimp years ago.
Was it Heldenberg? Was that
Heldenberg, I think it was.
Hindenburg.
There you go.
Well, I've got a farmer question for a diesel guy. What's good, bad, and ugly with the soy diesel running diesel motors?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Unless you're talking about your sulfur content and stuff like that.
Well, does it gel or not gel? What the algae? Everybody's talking about the algae in soy diesel. You guys familiar with any of that or?
So what I was told through my schooling about soy diesel is it's the same thing as ethanol on the gas side. Is diesel fuel has to be about $4.50 or $5 a gallon to make it more efficient to make it out of beans, soy oil versus crude oil. So it's more of a market game. I think ethanol is somewhere around $3.50 a gallon to make it's once fuel reaches $3.50 a gallon, and these numbers may have changed. It's what I'm going off back in the past. Once it reaches like $3.50 a gallon, at that point it's cheaper to make gas out of corn than gas out of crude oil. I think with soy diesel, it's around $4.50 a gallon. As far as the quality of the diesel, I think it's basically the same in the additive package. It's pretty much the same. So I don't.
Well, I've made the comment on one of these channels, but the corn market follows the crude oil market. If you see crude oil going up, corn's going to go up because ethanol is going to. It drives the ethanol market, which drives the corn market.
Which raises a big question: is it a good idea to make fuel out of food?
There's a lot of byproducts comes out of the fuel process.
The one huge advantage of making gasoline out of corn is no part of that corn goes to waste, right?
No.
Because once they dry it down, that gets turned into other forms of food substances and dog
Higher
food,
protein.
higher protein stuff.
Food substance. I
Because
mean,
what's left is still available for.
you know, on like an ethanol plant, we call it DDGs, which is the fiber part of the corn. You know, so it's very high protein, very high quality feed coming out of it.
Now on the, I remember going to Indiana State Fair and going into that building with everything in there that's made out of soybeans.
Oh, that was crazy. Yeah,
I mean, it'll just blow your mind from shoes to lipstick to shoe polish to cereals to peanut butter to, I think there was a Lego in there, plastics, some plastic stuff comes out of it. I'm sure it's probably on Indiana's website somewhere.
It probably is, or an Indiana soybean
I'm sure you
board.
can look it up. Just Google products from
Soil.
corn or soy.
Yeah.
And it'll just absolutely blow your mind about what's made from those different products. So, you know, I guess that's a double-edged sword you bring up. Like, do we need to make fuel out of food? But
Right.
I mean, from the farmer perspective, I think it's good because it helps keep the prices up, right?
Yeah.
I think I'd be more concerned about keeping our crop in our country.
Yeah, that's.
Well, I mean,
I can see that.
You know, that's
you ain't gonna eat yellow food or yellow corn out
I'm
of the field.
hungry enough, I might.
You might. You make a lot of cornbread out of it, grinder for cornmeal, but
Cornbread eats too.
yeah. But you know, your food grade corn be your white corn or your sweet corn.
But let me ask you this, and we're getting way off base here. Can the United States produce enough crop with the available farmland that we have to support our population?
Oh yeah, we're 27% of our corn production out of the U.S. goes to Mexico right now.
Right. So
yeah, we've got to have exports to get rid of our food right now.
So that's, I mean, I guess with that being said, the exports help keep the prices, the demand high, which keeps the price up. But
now there's, like last year, we had U.S. planted 92 million acres of soybeans. We're exporting a bunch of that. If this sustainable aviation fuel takes off, which is soy oil fuel, we need an additional 90 million acres of soybeans just to feed that market.
it's a lot.
That's a lot. We need 200 million acres of solar panels to keep up with electrical demand right now. Where's all this acreage come
That's
from?
unrealistic.
Yeah.
Because those acres are going to have to share each other to some extent. I mean, I know they're getting more creative about covering parking garages with them and different things like that, which is a good dual purpose. But taking up good farmland for this stuff is just blows my mind.
Right.
So, all right, circling back around, getting on track. We've talked about hydrogen, we've talked about electric, we've talked about natural gas, diesel, gas, some turbine stuff. Is there any other alternative fuels that we need to be keeping our eye out for?
No, the thing I've worked on here in the last, probably the early 2000s was I actually worked on some of the electric vehicles and the hybrid vehicles with that at the company in New Albany.
Right. So before we get off the diesel engine kick and get into where you're at now, I feel, this is my opinion solely, somebody can jump on this. I feel like the DEF, which is the diesel exhaust fluid systems that are put on these diesel engines nowadays, was a quick, easy Band-Aid to meet government regulations. Everybody was in a panic. Cummins actually paid fines for a few years on some engines instead of putting these systems on there. Basically, all they do is spray ammonia in the exhaust stream, which is the DEF fluid, which catches the carbon particles out of the exhaust stream and
basically reduces the NOx.
So if they could get that, so let me end that statement by saying, in most applications, if that system's working properly, the air that goes through the air filter on that engine actually comes out the exhaust pipe cleaner.
Technically, I guess.
Well, we're going to go the engineering route, so technically. Now, I know the reality of that answer is it depends on what you're measuring for.
Exactly, and the levels you're measuring.
Yes, exactly. But that's their argument, is that they clean the air as they run. Which, for carbon and a few other things, they might be right. There's other stuff they're just letting slide underneath the rug. We're going to pretend like we didn't happen, like the train that went into the damn river nobody wants to talk about in East Palestine. Did you see where Erin Brockovich has got involved in that now?
No.
Oh boy.
No.
Yeah, she said this is worse than, what was the one she did out there in California?
Oh, is that
The power plant that...
Well,
I did not know she's involved
Yeah,
up there. No.
she's fired up and rolling. She said this is the worst gaslighting she's seen since back then, and she ain't gonna let it slide. Anyways, we're off track again. So all these manufacturers, their quick and easy answer to this, DEF, diesel exhaust fluid, or spraying ammonia into this, was not an overly new technology. Like, power plants have been doing this for a while on some of their stacks. Like, we kind of knew this worked. My opinion is the government took wind of this, that we can force these guys to use this technology they got to make it work. I don't know the answer to this, but I feel like, and I'm amazed that nobody's come up with a better system than that, because there's so many moving parts. There's pumps, there's sensors, there's hoses, there's injectors. There's so many moving parts to the whole thing, and ammonia is corrosive. It's hard on stuff. Do you know, or do you see in the future a totally different style system for emissions?
I think it would, yes, I do. I think there's technologies that can be fine-tuned way much better than they are.
Are some of these technologies using static electricity charges to control some of this stuff?
Not that I'm aware of, but that doesn't mean they're not out there.
Why won't he talk, Chris? So I gave an example of one. Why don't you give an example of one?
What are you talking about? That's an engineer's prerogative, it's denial, right?
Denial.
That's part of the reason you love them so much.
Does this go back to the conversation we had off camera about, since we didn't invent it, we don't talk about it?
No, that's not this case, because
Okay.
there's things that have been invented that I won't claim, and because I don't agree with them. But there are situations like that. Good things that have been invented will not be put out to the public because it's a pride issue with some stuff.
Right. What can you answer this question? Do you foresee us having a total revamp of the emission systems in the next 5 years on diesel engines?
I don't think so.
You think we're going to stay where we're at for a
I
while?
think for a while. I think it's one of those, it ain't broke, let's not mess with it.
Can you answer this question? Can you confirm the technology is out there to remove these systems if we wanted to?
I believe it is. I'm not going to say whether I know or not, but I believe it is. He's really good at backing in corners.
Yeah. I'll help you. I'll change subjects on you.
I was just getting started, Farmer Chris. Why are you backing me up?
Well, you mentioned power plants a while ago. I hauled some scrubber stone for a couple of years, which scrubber stone is a limestone rock mix that they take to a power plant, they grind it into lime, make a slurry out of it, and some way put it,
They grind it up into a powder and
Powder.
they dust it in.
dust it in, so it's collecting the pollutants out of the smokestacks and keeps it out of the air, so it's bonding it to a
You
material.
know, whatever, the calcium in that rock, is it NOx or it's a carbon particle. I'm gonna get the science on this wrong, but whatever they don't want in the air
Will
will
bind to
chemically bond to that calcium in that rock.
What do they do with that when they're done with that?
As far as I know, it gets buried in the ash ponds.
What part of that goes to drywall plants then?
That's the gypsum, which is a different form of a calcium rock that's ground up. And
Okay.
they may have used some of that. Scrubber stone and gypsum are pretty similar because they're high in calcium, but Jerry Davis would be able to answer that for
Well,
us.
we hauled scrubber stone to Gibson Station, dumped it, went around back and got a slurry that come out of the smokestacks and hauled to a drywall plant in Shoals so they could make drywall out of it.
That may have been just the wet bottom ash. That'd be a good question for Aaron if he was here.
Yeah.
In power plants, they do the exact same thing. They inject, usually on the backside of their SCRs, which are bag houses, which is no different than a DPF on a diesel engine. They inject ammonia into the exhaust stream of the fuel burn. And honestly, Aaron will tell you these power plants don't always have everything working properly, but if they are, the air coming out of them is fairly clean as well. You know what I mean? Like, just because it used to be dirty and nasty and bad, don't mean it still is dirty and nasty and bad. It's like coal fired. A lot of these, like Peabody Coal Mine, which is a big coal company in our area.
Yep.
I would say half of their mining equipment was run off electric. Their great big shovels and their big mine trucks ran from electric back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, they big shovels electric.
You know what I mean? I remember going down there as a kid with Dad and watching some of these things run, these coal mines, these big electric shovels. So that technology's old. Now, back in the 70s, 80s, maybe even the early 90s, I remember the largest coal-fired power plant in the country is 30 miles from here? I lived 15 miles downwind from it in Troy, where I grew up at.
Yeah.
I can remember if the wind blew just right, you had a black layer of scum on your car. Everybody in this area dealt with it.
Yeah.
That power plant don't run as hard as what it used to, but I don't. Now it's the foundry. The foundry's the dirty polluter around here. Nobody talks about, but everybody still blames it on the power plant.
Yeah, it's the power plant.
But it's the dang foundry. And as far as I know, the foundry don't have minimal
Emissions.
Yeah. And they're blowing core sand all over the place, and all the fumes from melting that.
Yeah,
let's take this into perspective. I'm getting off here, but they literally buy cars out of a junkyard and literally throw them in a fire
and melt
them. What are you over there smiling for? You know I'm right, don't you?
I know nothing.
You are no fun.
Prerogative, yes, that's right.
But nobody talks about that. But everybody wants to talk about this coal-fired power plant that's got all these emissions and baghouses and SCRs and ammonia streams and scrubber stone. This thing's regulated to the hilt, but literally there's this huge factory down here burning old cars, and nobody wants to say a damn thing about it.
Well, they're burning coke and oxygen, and coke is
they're still burning. Chris,
it's coal.
You can say what you want. They're burning old cars.
Well, they're melting cars. Yeah,
they're burning cars.
Yeah.
Well, I know that they recycle. A lot of your steel companies do that to get
they throw
started. Yeah,
they throw all those things in there to assist in the process to make your junk car burn faster.
Yeah,
but all right. So, Mr. Engineer, correct me where I'm wrong.
I ain't saying a word.
So I don't know. It's so.
Well, I could give you my experience on DEF.
Well, one quick. Is it a perception issue, an education issue, a social media issue, a media issue, or just a plain ignorance of our society issue?
I think
Why are you sweating over there?
Sweating.
You act like you're on the hot seat or something.
He's looking. I got two guys staring right at me, asking questions that I really don't know if I want to answer.
I asked you before we started what we can and can't talk about. You said everything's fair game.
Did I say that?
You did.
I'm not sure I said that.
I'm glad I got here late.
I think some of it is people don't like change. A lot of it is people don't like change.
Yeah.
Being an engineer, I live by that creed. I hate change. I hate it. But I think people's willingness to change is it's kind of been pressured by social media, by your media and stuff.
I'm gonna go with it's more of a. I'm gonna tell a story here, and then you guys can take what you want. I got a friend. He's got a sister. We'll leave these all nameless. And she went out and bought an electric car because she's going to save the environment one car at a time. Mm-hmm. All right? Elon Musk buys Twitter. She sells her electric car because she's not going to support that guy. So now she's back driving a gas guzzler again. I mean...
So she went from saving the world to hating the guy now?
Yeah. So are you just doing what's cool and convenient that day, or are you actually putting the time in to understand what's going on? Because I honestly believe today, if you have a fuel-efficient engine that has all the emission systems installed on it, that's probably better for the environment than an electric vehicle.
In the long run, that's possibly a true statement.
It is a true statement. Just say it.
No.
I'm going to start putting words in your mouth.
No, you're not. Engineering prerogative.
No, correct me if I'm wrong. You had a hybrid vehicle.
I had a hybrid Yukon, yes.
Yes. What was your thoughts of it on
I
power?
love that thing. I love that thing, but I never had to deal with replacing batteries or anything like that. Now that was a 2-mode. That was one that would charge from the transmission.
Okay.
It never even had an electric start on it.
Oh, really?
It would actually start the engine from the transmission.
Really?
Yeah. So it was a 2-mode setup. It'd run on gas until it'd get electric assist going down the road.
Yeah.
And then if you were under, I believe it was 30, 35 miles an hour, it would run solely on electric.
Yeah. That's the way a lot of the race car technology is going
Yeah.
now, is hybrid, electric
But-
assist and stuff.
It took its own mind at one time, though, and derailed and went to the woods, or what was that all
the
about?
reality of it.
Wife was
I need a
driving.
drink
Oh,
for
the
this.
wife was driving.
Yeah, I'm hoping she won't see this too much.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
Now, wait a minute. Was it the wife's fault or the vehicle's fault or the engineer's fault?
Well, didn't you have a wife take one through the woods, too?
I had nothing to do with electric.
Oh, okay.
That was more to do with an iPhone and not paying attention.
Well, I knew you had one. I didn't know what your thoughts on after driving it. So.
well, it did have an electrical issue that was not tied to the drivetrain.
Okay.
But let's just say the steering recentered on gravel, and that's not too healthy for it. So it made its own parking garage out of its own wood, and that was the end of that. So that was a fun ride too, wasn't it, Sydney?
I guess we could go on and on about this.
So I guess I got a question for an
back to you.
engineer. Everybody wants to know. Is the motor the first thing they think about, then build the whole car around it so you can't work on it?
I don't know that. I honestly, truly don't know
Yeah.
that.
Boy, they make it difficult to work on some
Well, I
vehicles
got a
nowadays.
lot to say on this one too. Can I interrupt you?
Sure.
So, I'm just going to answer for
gonna
you.
keep
'cause
poking
won't
here.
even, he won't even talk. So I'm going to tell you a couple different stories here. This is the true reality of it. So I got a cousin that graduated from Purdue, which is supposed to be the best engineering school for mechanical engineering.
I'll disagree with that, but go
Well,
ahead.
that's what they. If you go to
That's
that
their-
school, that's what they brainwash you into thinking.
Have you been to Purdue campus?
I have. I got a lot of
Did you see
family.
that parking garage up there they can't use? They got like a 7-story parking garage that the students engineered. They can only park cars on 3 layers because they forgot to figure the way of the cars when they was designing the parking garage.
Well, I seen the Purdue engineering team at an event, and they couldn't even engineer themselves in a straight line, which was ridiculously embarrassing.
Wow.
They couldn't engineer a basketball team
No,
last
and-
night either.
Yeah, they've lost 2 engineering, and then
But go ahead.
then I heard this very, very, very well-respected individual in the aviation industry asking these individuals. They were interviewing them, asking them questions.
That's where you're talking. Yeah.
Asking them questions. I've never taken the first aviation course in my life. Period. These people are supposed to be 2nd and 3rd year engineering students in the aviation program at Purdue, and they couldn't answer the questions. I'm over there saying, I know. Some damn dumb hilljack from Indiana knows more than what, and I'm going
Oh,
to be
here
flying.
comes the hill jack again.
And I'm going to be flying on things. No, thank you, sir. Anyways, so I got a cousin that graduated from Purdue, took a job with Ford. I think it was a 2000. What was the year they redid the Mustang from the square body to the rounded front? Was it 2002, 2003, 2004, somewhere in there?
I'm not a Mustang fan.
Never
So.
owned
Oh, I'm not either. So it was the same time they were having the issues with the rollover with all the excursions. He was working for Ford Motor Company, and my cousin's job was to engineer the engine bay. So he had to make sure everything fit in the engine bay. That was his job. He gets this all done. So basically they would design like the intake air because it fit in the engine bay, or they designed the oil pan because it made it fit in the engine bay, et cetera, et cetera. So he comes to Christmas one day and he's laughing. He's just laughing his ass off. I said, what's so funny? He's like, yeah, I got this thing done. I sent it down to get flat rate. It's going to take 12 hours to change oil in it. I said, 12 hours to change oil? He's like, yeah, I forgot to put a drain plug in. So I had to pull the engine to get the oil out. I'm like, and you think that's funny? I'm the dumb SOB that's going to have to deal with your stupid shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's not funny to me.
And it does happen.
And then
Skip the simple stuff.
I'm not going to name this other company, but this is more of a recent turn of events. Large company went on strike. I've got to know some of the higher ups there at that company, and they need to start keeping product out, right? Mm-hmm. So they asked all the guys in the office, including the engineers, let's go out on the line and put these things together and get them on down the road. You know how many changes were made once them boys started working on those things?
Oh, I bet.
Why is that not standard procedure?
Well, at some engine companies it is.
Did you have to go out on the line?
I did.
Some? Did you?
I did. When we were working on engines, they actually,
Now, you're talking about Cummins.
Yep.
I call people by names except for the one company I can't say because they pay some bills still. But
Yeah.
no, I'm kidding.
But yeah, when we were developing the engine, it was a requirement. There was a tear down and rebuild day.
Oh, yeah.
It was actually, and it wasn't an engine on a stand either. It
Yeah.
was an engine in a truck.
Now, to elaborate on what you just said, sometimes Cummins, the engine manufacturer, don't have full control over that engine bay of that application.
Correct.
Yeah.
But you can still remote mount stuff and do some things to help them out. And I will say, back in the 90s or late 90s up to about 2006, 2007, with the exception of Mack, Cummins was probably the second easiest engine to work on. Bolt placement, just stupid shit. Like, give me enough room to get a wrench in there. Give me enough, if you're gonna, like air compressors, I forgot who it was, I think it was Cat or Bendix. They wouldn't mill out enough to where the bolt goes to hold the air compressor on there, so you couldn't even get a damn socket in
get a
there. You had to do an
wrench.
open end wrench.
Really?
Like, literally, a pencil fed more
Yeah.
countersink on that makes all the difference in the world. It's not that big a deal. So I will give Cummins credit on that. You can see that in their engine designs.
Yeah, the service was a big deal then. Fuel economy was big then. So that's what we focused on, was a lot of your emissions, a lot of your service, stuff like that. Now I will say that I work with the big three and other companies now, and General Motors actually puts their spec to the engineers that are designing things for wrench clearance. I mean, they do have a good awareness of service.
So I want to back up to Cummins real quick because I know I'm gonna get a bunch of hate for this, which is fine because I stand behind everything I said. I do bash on Cummins a lot, and it's mostly because they're noisy, they leak oil, and they're hard to start when they're cold.
Oh, yeah.
Their newer engines not so much, but back in I'd say 90 through about 2010, they were notorious for that. Especially the 855 bend cams, N14s, M11s. They all leaked oil. They were hard to start, and they were noisy. Even though 5, 9, 12 valves, that was the noisiest engine ever made.
You know, the biggest problem I got with the N14, I really think it would start if they would just redo some of the software on it.
Well,
That thing's got to build oil pressure before it'll fire.
That's
Right.
That's a precursor to the injectors they wanted to use, though. See, he ain't gonna tell everybody. I'm gonna tell everybody what's going on. He ain't bluffing my ass. But Cummins does do a lot of things really well. They've always been fairly reliable as long as you kept oil in them. Parts were fairly inexpensive and accessible within the last couple of years of COVID. It screwed with some stuff, and they were easy to work on. The only complaint I ever have about a Cummins design is that stupid, retarded auxiliary shaft that drives everything that pukes oil everywhere. Other than that, I can live with everything.
Other than that, and other than this.
Other than that.
Yeah.
You know, like on the pickup side, Cummins could get what power they needed with 6 cylinders moving versus Power Strokes and Duramax with 8 cylinders
now you're
moving.
going to get into geometries.
Well, it's less moving parts.
Yeah, but it's horsepower versus torque.
That's true too.
Well,
It's all leverage.
It also was able to take the punishment of Farmer Chris growing up.
Yeah,
Well,
It took a lot of punishment too.
you can say I
took
mean,
a lot of punishment.
Yeah, the old 5.9, the rotating assembly is pretty bulletproof, and usually if you screw it up, it's because you pushed it too hard. But it's still, it just like any engine out there, it still has its.
Somebody give me some hints to on my old Dodge pickup to adjust the wastegate
Honestly.
linkage rod just a little bit. Somebody adjusted a little too far.
Yeah.
Now he's got a burnt hole in his hood where the paint's gone because the turbo gets too hot on it.
All in all, honestly, I don't think I'd ever own a Cummins engine in a semi, but I honestly don't have. In all reality, I don't have an issue with them. That is it the 4.4 now or 4.3 BT I got in that Hyundai? It's a good engine. I don't think the 6.7s is as good engine, is why I didn't buy one. They've got some problems, but
I still have my 5.9, so.
yeah, but they, the ISX now, and which is in the semis, they've proved themselves to be fairly reliable. The reality, I guess, whenever I was back in the industry, if like the C12s, the C15 Cats, the 60 Series Detroits, the N14s, they were 1 million mile engines. They'd go 1 million miles.
Yeah.
The Max, E7s, E6s. Today, because of the harsh tuning they have to do with the electronics, the EGRs, the emission systems, a lot of the things we do to the engine actually makes it run dirtier, which don't make it as efficient, and it builds a lot of heat. If you can get 500,000-600,000 miles out of an engine,
it just don't seem like with an EGR valve, taking exhaust and dumping it back in, that's very clean on a motor.
You're using that. You're using COT to knock NOx out, basically, is what you're doing.
Yeah.
But you're a Mack guy.
Yep.
He's a Cummins guy. Wasn't there a time when Mack could not meet emissions or quit making motors that Mack started putting Cummins in them?
No.
Okay.
No.
I'll disagree with that.
Okay.
So somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, and there is some Mack trucks out there with Cummins motors in them.
Oh, yeah.
But where that comes down from is the engine, which is the one behind me, which is the E7 E-Tech engine. That engine was never going to clean up enough to burn on death.
Okay.
So the thought process is we got to have Plan B. The first plan was to go with Cummins. They were going to put Cummins engines in all Mack trucks. But in the meantime, Volvo bought them, and they ended up with all the Volvo engines in them.
Volvo engines in.
Is what ended up happening. So there was a handful of Cummins trucks out there.
It's probably mid to late 90s.
No, these would have been like that was whenever they went to the E7 from the E6 because they didn't have the E7 out for power. The E6 was only was it 10.9 liter or something, and the E7 was a 12 liter. But the conversation I'm recalling would have been like 2005-ish.
I see. I was out of the industry then.
But Mack was honestly not in the best shape then because of the emissions pressure, and then this engine here, they had a bunch of problems with it, with core sand and valve train problems, and they couldn't get it cleaned up enough to burn off death. But the MP8, MP9 engine, which is basically a Volvo engine, Volvo bought them. They went with the Volvo
You're talking
engine.
about the one with the hood popped?
Huh?
You're talking about the engine with
It's
the hood popped?
got 500,000 miles on it, getting a routine service. That'd be the one.
Oh, okay.
Routine service.
There is. The floor's wet. Under
Because I
there.
changed oil.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Man.
Easy now. But okay, we got way off track again. But I just want to say, Cummins is a company. I got a lot of family that works there. I know a lot of people that work up there. It's not an American company through and through, but it's still an American-based company. Would you say that?
Actually, I won't have a comment on that because I don't know. When I was there, it was pretty thick on USA, but
I think their engineering's still pretty heavily here in the States, but I think they've moved some production around.
Yeah.
But it's been good to this local economy. They do make some good engines. I will say they make some good engines. And honestly,
it's okay to admit that. It's okay.
Every manufacturer makes some good ones and some bad ones. But I want to go on, and I don't want to get into this argument what's better, Ford, Chevy, Dodge, Toyota, whatever. We can argue this all amongst them. Honestly, if I'm going to speak honest right now, as far as a company, like a corporate company, Ford Motor Company is probably my favorite. I'll be honest with you.
You don't even own a Ford.
I don't own a Ford. Ooh. But they took the least money for buyout, right? They have probably more of their manufacturing here in the States than the other big three, Chrysler and General Motors. They don't get quite as involved with the political shenanigans, I'll just call it that. But here's my problem with Ford. Everything's over engineered and impossible to work on. It's why I don't own one,
Is Ford's the one that's easier to take the whole cab off to work on the motor? It is pop the hood, ain't it?
which has a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of your companies are going,
We're going that way
too.
now.
Yeah.
Which I don't sound as bad as what it is because it's made to come off and go back
With
down.
electric plug-ins, yeah.
But, whenever I bought this new truck I got, every General Motors product I've had, like every part I go to get for it is probably like half the cost of anything else. I can pop the hood on that brand new 2023 truck out there and I can see the ground. Like I can get my hands down there and work on stuff.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
You go pop the hood on Jason Workslot's brand new 2022 Power Stroke.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't even close a napkin underneath the hood without it popping out the top. It's
Yeah.
Everything's tight under there.
It's all about efficiency now.
you know what I mean? So I don't buy General Motors because I think they're the best vehicle on the road. I buy them because I know they're going to break. I can afford to work on them, and their engineering train of thought aligns with my engineering train of thought, and I can think like them. Does that make sense? I'm sure there's people out there that buy Chrysler for the same reason. I think there's people out there that buy Ford for the same reason. Whenever I was a younger, I used to get into the argument about, which one's better than which. They all got their goods. They all got their problems.
Oh, yeah.
I just go with what works for me. And I've ran a lot of GM products 300,000-400,000 miles before. You know what I mean? I don't. They've got me by.
Yeah. Anymore, it's getting harder to work on. Now, I'm not talking about the big three. I'm talking about all companies now. I mean, just to change the spark plugs in a vehicle anymore, you almost have to remove the windshield bezel,
Not if it's
the
a
windshield
GM.
wipers.
It's a Toyota, you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been there, done that a few times.
Jack the engine forward or something
Really?
like that.
Some of the smaller cars you might, I don't know. Of course,
Yeah.
a lot of what I did was the bigger
Big
stuff.
trucks.
Sure, sure.
I guess the problem I got for Cummins, and it may not be the Cummins as much as the other company, but we got an Apache sprayer with a Cummins motor in it. If something goes wrong with the motor, we got to have Cummins come out. Apache.
For software wise?
Yeah, Cummins won't let Apache have the,
The same way with Hyundai.
and versatile tractor. Versatile dealer can't work on that Cummins motor. You got to have a Cummins tech come out and work on it. So
You want to know the Cummins answer to that? Because he ain't going to give it to you because he don't talk.
you don't need to work on it.
No.
Software is easy to steal.
Yeah, there's proprietary
Yeah.
information in
Yeah.
that software they don't want shared,
Yeah.
which I can kind of see that.
But then you go Dodge. It seems like a Dodge dealership works on all the dang motors, but I guess
it's
I
such
don't know.
outdated stuff.
yeah.
But he won't answer. I'm just answering for him.
Why am I here?
I need somebody to torment, Gator.
Something you can't say or may not say or don't want to say, but when I was
Sounds
talking
like
about
a good prequel right there. doesn't it?
about some of the stuff you worked on last, I remember you working on brake line stuff for automobiles, correct? Is
Can
that
you-
something what you're still working on
Yeah,
now?
that's current. Yes.
So can you speak of kind of what your situation is here today?
Well, right now I'm been promoted out of engineering
Have you?
basically. Now it's into testing, validation, prototyping, stuff like that. So I still get drugged back into the design realm,
Do you?
which that's really what I enjoy. I enjoy the fact that people can see what you do and not like it and cheat
Yeah.
on you and let you have it, and they let you know. And
I've never done that before.
Never.
Thinking about it, I should have videoed our trip to Terra Drive System.
Oh yeah.
But people talk about engineers, and something that people don't take into account is an engineer has to have some level of arrogance.
Do they?
You do.
I disagree with that statement.
Really?
Yeah. I think some of the best engineers in the world do their job, go home, and don't even talk about it.
You're right. You're right.
I think
But there's
the
always
engineers,
a critic.
I think the engineers that are arrogant are the ones that are trying to compensate for what they don't know. The smoke and mirrors game.
Well,
I'm not buying what you're selling, Gator.
well, you ain't swallowed the whole pill yet.
Well, feed me the other half because I didn't like that one.
Because you have critics no matter what you do. You can go one route or another route.
No
Someone's
matter
going to
which-
hate it.
Yeah, somebody's going to hate
Someone has to hate. You have to have thick skin.
it. Yeah.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
But
I don't think that has to make you arrogant, though.
I think it does make you arrogant in the long run. I don't think it may not be by choice, but I think you get so many battles that you have to fight just to prove your point. And granted, there are guys out there that they're just flat out arrogant. Again, we've dealt with issues of not invented here. You know, guys don't like designs because they didn't come up with it.
Yeah.
That's everywhere.
Yeah.
That's everywhere. Pride can be the worst technological crusher in the world right now. There's always, you know, you're trying to keep the public happy, but you're trying to keep mechanics happy. You're trying to keep service happy. You're trying to get durability out of it, and
Government happy.
somebody has to give somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
And no matter what, it always goes back to the engineer.
Yeah, I will agree with that statement that there's a lot more compromising that goes on in your guys' world than what we realize. And whenever I bitch about serviceability, that's one column on your spreadsheet of checklist.
Yeah.
As far as, you know, other criteria you have to meet. I guess my frustration comes in and not in the 15th or 16th chapter and deep in the details. It's the stupid common sense shit, like mill out the damn opening so I can get a wrench on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or don't make the dirt funnels.
Or don't make dirt funnels. Or don't mount this big old heavy DPF onto an aluminum intake. Like, there is no excuses for that shit.
We've kind of lost some of the KISS method.
Yeah, keep it simple,
Keep
stupid.
it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
So, I guess my frustration level goes through the roof. I'm not going to make any excuses about it. I'm completely 100% uneducated in the engineering world. Zero education, nothing. But whenever I look at something, and I can tell you by just looking at it that that's going to fail, or that ain't right, or that's wrong, or I can quickly see another solution that would be way better, my frustration level goes through the roof.
And I can see that. And there is some of a lost art to it right now.
You know, I just had an attachment company send me something. I ended up buying this attachment, but before I purchased, I said, I want to talk to your engineer. He said, what's your concern? I said, that joint is going to fail. He said, Mike, if that joint fails, I will give you a new rake. I said, stand by for pictures. A year and a half later, guess what he got? A picture of this piece of equipment in two pieces, right where I said it was going to fail.
Yeah.
I don't need all the math. I don't need all the science. I don't need the CAD system. I can tell you that's going to fail.
Yeah. And it's something you run into, you see a lot of it, is you see a lot of textbook engineers. The one thing that kind of helped me through engineering is the fact that growing up, my dad ran a small hobby farm.
So you got a taste of the other side of it.
Yeah, I've gotten my hands dirty.
I guess we call that redneck engineering.
Redneck engineering. Yeah.
But
We ain't got it, but we got to make it work.
Yeah.
redneck engineering works off of common sense.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
And some of the guys that I've dealt with, a lot of the guys are really good, and a lot of guys
They are.
really
You bring
listen.
up a good point there, is that we shouldn't categorize everybody.
Right.
Just like I shouldn't categorize all Cummins engine into Cummins. There's a few good ones in there every once in a while. You know?
Every now and then they get it right. So, but yeah, there's an art. There's a lost art, and it's just guys just have to go out and get their hands dirty and see what works and what doesn't work. I mean, there's designs I've worked with, some of these hybrid vehicles, and they're like, well, we want service to do this with one, we want this connector on with one bolt and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, you're going to do this, but you're going to give this up here. And they're like, well, okay. I was like, but you can't do this.
Yeah.
I said, it's not going to pass.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's that much right now as much as what it used to be probably in the mid-2000s in the automotive industry and a couple of different industries. But I feel like there was a sense of, instead of keeping it simple, stupid, the KISS method, everybody was in an arms race to out-engineer everybody else. and stuff got way more complicated than what it needed to be.
Well, yeah, there is a lot of that, and there's a lot of look what I can do
Right.
out there.
Instead of just sticking with the basics.
Right. Right.
I feel like, with this Cummins motor that's in my Hyundai, if you look at that motor, there's a whole lot of stuff on that engine that's just right back to the basics.
Yeah.
Went back to basic
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Let's go back to what we know works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop playing around with all this look at me stuff.
Yeah.
And
I can remember being at Cummins. Cummins had they had some down years before, in the I think it was the 80s, pre-90s. I know that much.
Yeah.
And I remember some of the comments that the engineers and managers made is we got too arrogant.
yeah.
And, realizing that's a big deal.
They got arrogant when they developed the PT fuel system,
Yeah.
which if people don't know is a pressure time fuel system, which is the preluder to what we know today as the common rail, which Cummins was right. It was the way of the future, but they got a little too cocky, a little too quick with it,
Right.
is what ended up.
Yeah. Keeping quality up is
You know more Cummins history than you thought I did, don't you?
Nah, nobody.
You're impressing me over here.
Nobody can argue like that and not know. So, and I know you can argue. So,
Yeah.
All right, we're running a little bit long here. I want to hit on something else though, and we're going to go a totally different. We're just going to go straight up mechanical engineering.
okay.
You're familiar with the tile plow I built.
Yep.
And I want to talk about how failure is part of engineering.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong with failure.
Absolutely.
So I built this tile plow and we had a few failures along the way. And I caught all kinds of slack about how I should have had an engineer draw it out. I should have had this done. I should have had this done. And I wasted my time with this, that, and the other. So let's go down a hypothetical route here. And I know you're on my side on this one, so that's kind of when I'm not going to pick on you on this one.
Gee, I'll pull my socks up on this one.
But everybody's got to know the value of time and money. Sometimes it's cheaper to try and fail than it is to run all these
Tests.
and all these simulations to still fail. Like, let me just get some real life data and go on.
Yes.
So back to my tile plow, the first failure we had was the lift cylinders on it. And everybody was going on and on about how I should have drove it out on CAD. I should have had an engineer spec it out, this, that, and the other. That cost me 6 hours and $100 worth of metal. How much time do you think I would have had with an engineer for him to tell me what I did wrong or didn't do wrong whenever I could just figure it out on my own?
Well, if you expedited it, you'd have probably got it in 2 weeks, maybe.
Yeah. So I've already been plowing pipe by the time he figured out whether he was going to look at it or not. And then dealing with some engineers on another project, the first thing they're going to do is point their finger at the part of the project they didn't engineer, and that's going to be their problem. Blew a hole in that system the other day.
You mean not invented here?
Yeah, I'm not invented here. Oh boy, let's go down. You want to play that game? I'll play that game. I got a list. I'll go down this road. So if you're a guy tinkering in the garage, if you're a guy thinking about building something, or if you're a guy that's got an idea, don't think you have to have it drawn out perfectly on paper or you have to have it engineered to a T. Start tinkering. Figure it out. I built that boot on the back of that plow hoping to get 10,000 feet of pipe in the ground. I built it out of the material I did because it was cheap and easy to prove as a prototype. I knew I probably had weak points on them, but I let them prove themselves before I ever I ended up plowing 160 something thousand feet of pipe in the ground. Again, everybody said it would never work.
Never work, yeah.
But my point is, the amount of money I saved by just trial and error versus having that particular project engineered is astounding. So this is where you come in. Why do I want to waste my time on that type of particular project with engineering?
Well, in that particular project, I wouldn't have.
Right.
I'd have done what you'd have done. I mean, we've all grown up this way where anybody that has not tinkered with anything, I mean, the growing up, there's no telling how many small engines that I've taken apart that I couldn't get back together. It drove Dad insane.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been there, done it myself.
Exactly. Exactly. And I know there's parts still laying around like that. But I think it's a project that you had that didn't warrant engineering as far as putting it on paper.
Right.
Engineer it as you go. I mean, impromptu stuff, being able to think on your feet is a big part of engineering. My opinion is.
Right.
That's what I think.
Now let's flip the thing here a little bit. If you want to talk about like major infrastructure or something that affects public safety or stuff like that, obviously it needs to be engineered and everything needs to make sure it meets spec and everything, weight loads and calculations and all that stuff's done. But I feel like we take it too far.
In a world that
It's full of lawyers.
as many lawyers as we
Sue
have,
happy, yeah.
and if you know what I deal with, we sell millions and millions and millions of brake hoses, just in a year, and obviously that's a safety concern on a car.
Right.
So we've got the stuff that we've built or the stuff that we continue to do the same way because we know it works and we know how to test that. It's proven. It's proven. But a project like you're talking about right now, you're talking about a one-off project. I mean, you're the one that's going to be running it. You're the one that owns it. You're the one that's going to be proofing it out. So
In the
you're
liability
the
of it,
engineer
yeah.
on that project.
Yeah, I am paying for my own failures.
Right.
And me paying for my own failures is still cheaper and more efficient than somebody to tell me it's going to fail and try to give me a correction. Because I guarantee you, with me paying for it, my solutions are going to be much cheaper and much more economical than any solution I ever got from a certified engineer.
And faster.
Yeah.
And I just walked around the farm show this last year, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Every major tile manufacturer in the United States has studied my plow. They knew exactly who I was. And I don't think people are going to go out and start building their tile plows, but I think I proved how easy it could be done.
It's funny how that happens sometimes. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
and the biggest manufacturer out of all of them told me I was crazy whenever I was going to do it to start with.
You know, I hate
Is that
to
because of the plow? Or just told you he's crazy?
Well, either one fits. So maybe I'm falling into that cocky little.
You know, you welded that first plow up here in the shop, or man behind the scenes welded up.
Yeah.
You know, and you had a few little failures, but it worked. The plow itself worked flawlessly.
Yeah.
You had somebody else weld a second boot up for it,
Oh my God, it's a joke.
and they struggled on it. So you know.
Yeah. So to put that in perspective, and I'll give Aaron a lot of credit on this. For those that don't know, there's a whole playlist on the channel about this tile plow. I honestly built it out of necessity. I got to sneeze. Excuse me. I actually built it out of necessity versus wanting to, because we end up with a pretty large tile
Large
job.
job.
I went to buy one from a couple different manufacturers, and there just wasn't one available in the timeline I needed. So I'm like, oh man, what am I going to do? And to buy one was, you're talking with GPS and everything on it, like probably close to $50,000.
I was going to say 50 or 60.
And I could have coughed up the money, but I didn't really want to cough up the money. So I thought, let me just think about this for a minute. I got this big dozer. I got this thing on the back that goes up and down. I got a welder. Got a little short guy that likes to weld. I literally in less than an hour drew this whole thing out on graph paper at my desk with a pencil, a protractor, ruler. Just I probably drew it 3 different times, but less than an hour for all my drawings. The very next day, I go to the machine shop in town, hand him my draft paper, and he cuts out all my pieces. We used all those pieces he cut out except for 2. Probably 30 piece cut list. We used them all but 2.
Yeah.
Then me and Aaron come up here and shop, and I'll give Aaron credit whenever it comes to welding stuff like that. Like, he knows what the hell he's doing as far as keeping it from warping and drawing and maintaining measurements. There's way more goes in that anybody realizes. So we use that boot for
Full season.
160,000 feet of tile. And we started having some crush failures on the back of it, which honestly we knew was going to happen. Like, it wasn't a huge surprise that happened.
It was a beta test.
It was a prototype.
Proving the concept.
So I didn't have time to repair this boot, and it worked, so I wanted to build a second boot. So I don't want to throw this machine shop under the bus, because they've done me a lot of good work, but I guess to prove what we did is the conversation. I took this I took the old boot down there, I took the boot roller down there, and he already had all my measurements from previous, right? I said, I want a new boot that'll put 6-inch tile in solo. I want to fix this boot, build them. And let me tell you, they struggled for 3 weeks to build these boots, and they still ain't right. Like, me and Aaron are still going to end up, and it's bad.
Yeah.
So, is that a conversation of maybe it's not as easy as it looks? I don't know where that goes.
Well, I mean, there's people that understand you, and there's people that don't understand what's going on.
And I don't feel like what we were doing with that was like really difficult work, but there's just certain things that are extremely important to the success of that have to be right. And those, like, there's some stuff you can just pray and spray and pray, as he would say. Then there's certain things that has to be right. And those few things that needed to be right just aren't right. But it'll work. We'll make it work. But
Well, did you take AutoCAD in high school, or AutoCAD was in high school when you was there?
CAD was actually starting out at school when I was in industrial arts.
Okay.
Yeah, but
so is that what you got you interested in that, or
no, mine's actually in Creo. I know they're teaching AutoCAD out there now. Mine's Creo now, which was previously Pro Engineer.
Okay.
So it's actually a 3D software. We actually use the Mechanica part, which is the FEA software.
Okay.
But yeah, I started on the CAD system, back in '98 at Cummins. They were actually using Pro E also.
Let's say 95, I was taking AutoCAD school.
Yeah.
I took it for 3 years. So somebody wanted to get started, and your path was to study.
Exactly what I was going to ask here, kind of in closing.
Yeah.
So if you had an individual at school come up to you and said, "Hey, I want to go down this particular route," what would your advice be to them?
Well, my first advice would be pick. Do you want to sit behind a desk or do you want to be hands-on?
I pick both.
Pick both.
It won't be difficult.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you're going behind the desk, you need to get your hand. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty.
That's
Is what
right.
we've proven here.
That's right. I mean, application's huge. I mean, that's what I was talking previously. I know a lot of book smart engineers that have no application skills, and that's unfortunate because they can sit there and talk the game, but they can't. Yeah. They can't push it out.
I've working with Aaron, and I've kind of aligned myself with a lot of like-minded people, but having a good team around you to bounce ideas off of and different trains of thought, because like you may be application-based, he may be book-based, and this guy may be service-based, but having that good team communication, I think, can go huge. A long way.
It is, and having somebody that you can go to, that you know that you can go to, it builds your confidence too.
Right.
Yeah.
It lets you go out and just a little bit more risk.
Right.
Just because you know that he can back you up on this and he can help fill the gaps.
Right.
That's a big deal.
Okay.
But for people that want to go into the engineering, I mean, application's huge. Do your CAD systems. Do your math classes. I mean, those are huge. I never thought I excelled in school with math or any of my classes.
Yeah.
But getting your schooling, getting your hands on, tinker.
Yeah.
Find something, tear it apart, tinker with it. I mean, again, I've got motors that I still haven't been able to put back together.
Yeah.
And then figure out what you really want to do, because there are different sides. There's
different paths.
There's design engineering. There's designing the part itself. There's designing the process to make that part. There's quality. There's all kinds of things. There's many different realms that you can go through.
So would you say it would be a realistic path for somebody to go to school and get the basics with like CAD and math, and then get a job somewhere and kind of fill out the work field? Because if you get in somewhere, there's a good chance your employer may even assist in your training if you can
training,
which is
yourself.
What I fell into. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of my, if somebody tells me they want to become a mechanic or they want to be in the service industry, and they're going to go to like a Lincoln Tech like I did, or Vincennes or something like that, I'll be straight up like, why are you wasting your time? Like, you're going to learn on engines that are 10 years dated. You're going to learn the absolute basics. You're not going to learn anything advanced at all. Like if you are serious about, and you're going to have to pay for it. Obviously, I'm not getting sponsored by Lincoln Tech or Vincennes anytime soon. But if you go to work for a major engine company, Cummins, Cat, whoever, or major car company, Ford and GM, whatever. I don't care if you get in the beginning and just change oil for 6 weeks. If you prove yourself, that talent will be recognized.
Yeah.
They will send you. All these companies got their own programs.
Yeah.
They will send you to their programs. They will teach you on the latest and greatest stuff that's on the road today. They will also teach you on what's coming out. And then you know what that person will look at me? Yeah, but they'll make me sign a 3 or 4 year non-compete. You dumb SOB, you're going to go to school for 2 or 3 years anyways. What the hell's the damn difference?
Yeah.
You know what I'm like? That is the most irrelevant argument I could ever hear. Like they are going to pay you to go to school.
Yeah.
And then they're going to ask you to work there for 2 years? How dare they?
How dare they?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Versus you're just going to go party for a couple years and learn the basics and then go still do that. Then if you hire in, they're still going to make you do the same thing.
Go back through their program
Go
again.
back to their program again. I don't blame these companies for if they're going to invest in training you to require you to stay or pay your way out.
John Deere has changed their program towards that way now.
But there's, I went to Lincoln Tech, pretty much a waste of my time. I knew the basics. They confirmed I knew the basics, and they shipped my ass out the door. That's what it come down to. Now, I went to work for a Mack truck dealership, and that Mack truck dealership gave me the opportunity to take training through them. I took advantage of every training opportunity I got, and I learned a lot.
Yeah.
It's stuff 20 years later I still apply today.
Yeah. When it's part of my journeymanship when I was at Cummins was they actually had classes where you tear the engines down.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just one engine. You could take the whole onslaught of engines.
Well, and
rebuild them.
Even me being from a dealership going to, they called it Mack University at the time, you had access to like those engineers were in those classes. And you could talk to them about issues coming through your shop and their opinions on it, or they know this is a known issue and this is how they're addressing it, or help you diagnose stuff. And electronically controlled engine, no matter who makes it, is still the basic operating principle. You know, going back to Lincoln Tech, I had a professor up there, his name was Gillenwater, and had a 100-page test in diesel engines class, and I wrote every answer down as heat. I answered every answer in that test as heat. He failed me. I argued. I got 100. His exact answer was, he goes, how in the hell does heat make oil pressure? I said, well, that's simple, sir. I said, oil pressure is created by resistance. Resistance is created by a pump. A pump's turned by the engine. The engine's turned because of combustion. And combustion happens because of heat. Ding!
Go back to the argument skills here.
Yeah.
That's what they taught him up there.
So I could go name something on the engine.
Yeah.
It all goes back to heat.
Yeah.
And he pissed me off. I answered them all heat, and I argued and won. Now, the test may got rewrote after that. I don't know for sure. But
all the questions they say don't answer with
don't answer. Heat is not the answer of any question.
But that goes back to my point of, I ain't going to say I wasted my time at Lincoln Tech, but I wish I just would have went straight into the workforce and learned what I did. As far as following my education after high school, the 2 years I spent at Lincoln Tech was it. It was pretty much a waste of my time. I'll be the first to admit that. But the knowledge I gained from the real world experience and the people in the real world, had some awesome teachers at Mack, had some awesome teachers at the dealership, had some awesome mentors along the way. That's where my knowledge comes from, and I don't want to throw a previous business partner under the bus with a degree from IU in business, but he knew the book side of the business, and I'm not going to deny that fact whatsoever. But I mean, I had the business degree, but I also knew the common sense side of business, and after a while, we got mutual respect for each other. I think it went a little bit better, but I had to realize that he was right sometimes, but he also had to realize I was right sometimes.
So I went to Purdue for a year and realized that wasn't my lifestyle. So
Too far north.
yep, Grandpa probably taught me the most of anything, and he dropped out of school in 8th grade. And then when I went to construction world, my German leader, he was a high school dropout, and he was very well sought after in the industry because of his knowledge in the trade.
Grandpa teach you how to check a spark plug?
Oh, I ain't gonna do it like he did.
No, I ain't never seen that.
I've never
before.
seen a guy grab a whole spark plug and just start cranking her over and see which one fired.
That's hot.
That's hot.
That's all about your calluses. The thicker your callus, the less it hurts.
I guess so.
That's true engineering. I had an electrician tell me that one time. I said, "How do you do that?" He said, "You don't work hard enough." He said, "You get a big enough callus." He said, "You'll just be a tingle." I guess there's always been this age-old argument about engineers versus mechanics and engineers versus this, that, and the other. I just want to be fair to everybody. I think it goes back to there's good mechanics, there's bad mechanics, there's good engineers, there's bad engineers. I've worked with as many or more good engineers than I have bad.
Right.
I think what makes, I'm going to circle back around to this, what makes an engineer really bad is cockiness.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever he gets his heels dug in, dead set that he's right and nobody else can prove him wrong, he's in trouble. If you want to be a good engineer, you need to be a team player. You need to be open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be applied to a lot of different things.
I've been humbled many times.
Yeah, I have too. I'm not going to deny it. I've screwed up some dirt jobs. I've screwed up some mechanicing jobs. I've screwed up a tile plow. But I look at that as part of learn from it.
Yeah,
don't sit there and lick your wounds.
Don't do it again.
Learn from it.
Yep.
Like, what do we need to do to make sure this don't happen again and make it better? So, go on. Well, I appreciate you coming in and letting us harass you.
Well, sure.
Pick on you a little bit.
I mean, I get beatings nowhere else. Why would I not want to come in for this?
Chris gets tired of me picking on him, so I had to get some new new material.
New
in here,
blood
so
here.
At least he kept it in the family. Though.
Yeah. Well, I'm the one to invite him, so I guess I'll see what payback I get after this.
One of the funniest things that I always had to deal with is I used to have to travel to Detroit a lot for designs and stuff like that. I mean, we'd actually be on the car, and every one of them would go, "Where are you from?" I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, you've got an accent like you're the biggest hill jack in the world." I said, "Sorry."
Sorry.
I mean, when I'm just doing some of these designs, we took on some of the biggest companies in the world, and this Southern Indiana hill jack, wins.
Yeah.
Because I was able to apply common sense to it.
Yeah.
And
That's what's lost in so many things is common sense.
yeah.
And that can be applied across a smorgasbord of different things as common sense.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I and follow up on that story. I went to college in Indianapolis, which is only 3 hours north of here.
Mm-hmm.
Detroit's 6 hours north of here? 5.5, 6
6.5,
hours north.
6
So
hours.
it's not that far away from
Right.
us. And I became a manager at Lowe's, and I'd paid something over the PA, and I had this one manager. He was a lot of fun. I'd paid something, and no more than I hung up the phone, he's like, "Can we get the city translation on that, please?"
Can I buy a valve?
Oh, it's like, of course, some people take offense to it. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't bother me one bit. It will move on. So, all right, well, sir, I appreciate you coming in, letting us harass you a little bit. And you're, I will give you credit. We've had a lot of conversations. You're not your typical engineer.
I am atypical, yes.
Yeah, you live more on our side of the world than what you do on the other side of the world. You're also a good family friend, so appreciate that. And we'll see how the comments go on this, and maybe we'll have you back, and maybe you'll not want to come back.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for listening, everybody.
Absolutely.